Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. We have some big fat bannings going on today, spanning across multiple formats. I did a video talking about this announcement probably about like a week ago, and I guessed a little bit about what was to come, but this is way more than I was expecting. We actually have 5 different cards that are getting the ban, so we'll put those up on the screen to begin with here. We've got Golos, Tireless Pilgrim, Oko Thief of Crowns, Once Upon a Time, Veil of Summer, and Underworld Breach, all receiving bannings, but in different areas. Now, I said that I didn't think Standard was going to get any bannings going on, and they actually aren't. Starting out, I'm just going to go with the way they are listed in the announcement in terms of the banning. So, we're starting with Golos, Tireless Pilgrim being banned in Brawl. We'll go through the cards and the formats that they're banned in. Then we'll go through Wizards' discussion as to why this has occurred. So for Brawl, we have Golos, the Tireless Pilgrim. Very, very solid card. Obviously, I'm not terribly surprised in one way to see that it's banned, but in another way, it actually was sort of surprising to me because I wasn't expecting Wizards to be this on top of Brawl, really. Historically, Wizards hasn't paid that much attention to keeping Brawl a healthy format, so this is an interesting divergence from that for me, and it does tend to say good things about the likelihood of Brawl continuing to be an ongoing thing on Arena. And I mean, let's be real. They get to charge people gold or gems each month to play Brawl on a more regular basis, so they do have a genuine interest, just from a financial perspective, in making sure that Brawl remains healthy. Now, the next group of bannings we're going to talk about is specifically Arena only, because this is for the Historic format. And in Historic, they have removed cards from the Suspended and moved them to the banned list. In case you aren't familiar with Suspended, because it's a very new concept and specifically applies to the digital world, there are cards that don't receive a full-on ban. You're not allowed to play with them, but it's like a temporary sort of thing where they get moved to Suspended and then a final verdict. It's like they're in a holding prison cell and a final verdict will be rendered, whether they will be deemed guilty and get a ban or whether they will be innocent. Like Buddy, was it Buddy in the Shawshank Redemption? Was he not? Yeah, he didn't do anything. And he spooned his way to freedom. So will they spoon their way to freedom? Did he use a spoon? I don't know. Either way, the deal is cards go from Suspended to banned or free. And in this case, we have 3 cards moving from the Suspended list to the banned list. Oko, Once Upon a Time, and Veil of Summer have all become full-on banned in Historic, whereas Field of the Dead has been spooned its way free, has been declared a free man, and is now actually allowable in Historic. So once this goes into effect, which is today actually, so I guess it doesn't matter. They used to take some time before they put them into effect, but they've changed that. And the effective date for everything now is pretty much, oh wait, hold on, never mind. Their effective date's listed here. The tabletop date is the 10th, Magic Online is the 10th, and Arena's the 12th. So on the 12th, that's when you'll be able to play Field of the Dead in Historic again. And honestly, Field of the Dead was dominant back when it was around, but this makes sense in terms of it doesn't feel like Fields of the Dead's going to dominate in Historic. It dominated in Standard because there wasn't much that could stand up to it. We didn't know the Oko Storm was coming, but honestly, Field of the Dead at the time was a very, very successful deck that felt overpowered, but when you compare it to every card available in Historic, it becomes a little less daunting, right? So that's the Historic category. Then we've got Legacy. That's where you're going to see Underworld Breach being banned. Now, this is not surprising in the least. This was the card that I thought had the highest likelihood of catching the ban hammer, and that's as somebody who doesn't pay a ton of attention to what's going on with any particular meta. So when word gets to me about a card being a problem, it tends to be like a big problem because word has to spread far enough outside of the regular community and target audience for that kind of information, right? So Underworld Breach has gotten the ban hammer, and in Modern, we get a double banning, basically. Once Upon a Time double banned. Banned in Historic and banned in Modern. And I mean, let's be real. That it makes perfect sense for Once Upon a Time to be banned. So what I want to do is go through their reasoning, and if I feel like there's additional thoughts I want to add on the subject, I will. So starting out with Brawl, it says, in Brawl Play on Arena, decks using Golo's Tireless Pilgrim as their commander have risen to become about 10% of the field. This makes Golos twice as popular as the next most popular Brawl commander. While this isn't inherently problematic, Golos' 5-color identity also circumvents deck building restrictions that most other Brawl decks need to work within. Additionally, Golos' ability to tutor for specific lands, which can, among other things, help pay for future commander taxes, reduces variety of gameplay in a way that's inconsistent with the spirit of a singleton format. For these reasons, Golos Tireless Pilgrim is banned in Brawl. Now, I am 100% behind... I'm 100% behind this banning, because the Golos is like, it's a really strong card. What you get for 5 mana, I mean, you get a 3/5 creature that just when he shows up automatically grabs you a land. And then you can spend 7 mana, and yes, you do need all 5 colors, but it's not as hard to get there as you think. So you need all 5 mana and 2 to exile the top 3 cards of your library and play them for free. Golos is really strong. Obviously, Golos has made an impact in a number of places, right? Golos was part of the reason that we saw Field of the Dead getting the boot in Standard, because it was too strong. So it makes perfect sense from a Brawl perspective that this not only it helps you mana smooth and reduce the commander taxes, because every time you're recasting Golos, you're getting another land, essentially almost cutting your commander tax in half, while also giving you access to every color for your deck, because Brawl uses that commander color identity concept where any mana symbols that appear anywhere on the card determine the identity. So this can be basically like 5-color good stuff in Brawl. Now, I was genuinely surprised by this happening, because when Wizards introduced Brawl before, they introduced it around the time of Dominaria, and they introduced it in the paper way and didn't actually pay any attention to it. They let it flop hard. They brought it out as a format that at the time really just seemed like it was created to sell Dominaria packs, where it's like, Dominaria has Legends, we need a format that uses Legends, let's just go, boom, here you go, Standard, Legends, Commander, Brawl, whatever. And so Brawl just fell flat because they didn't do enough to promote it, plus and this is the key part right here, is they didn't have proper stewardship over the format in terms of ensuring that nothing got out of hand. And so Brawl was actually destroyed by Brawl. And Brawl is the name of a legendary creature from the Kaladesh blog that made for really, really unfun, dumb nonsense in the Brawl format, and essentially just like destroyed the format. It ruined it. There was too many people playing that. It was unfun, and everybody just kind of dusted their hands and walked away from Brawl. And I honestly thought at that point that Brawl was done as a format. Now, because they have it on Arena really mostly only has access to Standard anyways, so it doesn't feel like you're if you're playing Brawl for real in like real paper Magic, you compare it to Commander, you have so many fewer options when it comes to playing Brawl than you do to Commander. So the comparison is awful. But on Arena, there is no competing format. It is the de facto Commander experience. It's the best you're going to get on Arena, at least at the current time. So that gives Brawl its own little niche of, do you like to play Singleton with Commander rules? Well, we have this. It's not exactly Commander, but it might be just enough to scratch the itch. So you put that on Arena and go, okay, here we go. We're the only game in town. And it starts to flourish. And this is evidenced by the fact that Wizards has successfully now run multiple, they call them events, but really it's like a monthly pass to get to play Brawl. Normally you can only play Brawl once a week without doing direct challenges to your friends. That's how they had it set up. And then they changed it so that every month you can pay them 10,000 gold or 2,000 gems and you get access to play Brawl as much as you want. Now, I personally think it's a little bit skeezy to be doing that, in all honesty. I don't think it's fair to make the players pay extra, but really my feelings on the matter aren't going to change the reality of it. And the upside here is at least that because of this specific like monthly charges, this may be what's making them go, you know what, we need to make sure Brawl survives. And this shows that they're paying enough attention that they're not willing to let Golos become a genuine problem. He's showing signs of being a problem and diminishing variety. And as someone who actually really enjoys variety in Magic, I think this is a really good indicator that Brawl will remain healthy on Arena. I could be wrong about that, but this is actually a heartening style ban. When we dealt with the Fields of the Dead and the Oko bans, it was like a loss of confidence time where you're just like, oh God, Wizards, come on, get it together. What are you doing? So anyways, when it comes to Brawl, that's what's banned, and I feel like that's a solid move. Let's move on to Historic. The article says, in the last Historic update, 4 cards were suspended from the format for having problematic win rates and reducing diversity. We now have updates to those suspensions, with Fields of the Dead becoming unsuspended, and Oko, Thief of Crowns, Veil of Summer, and Once Upon a Time becoming banned. Because of the digital-first nature of Historic and its unique approach to adding card content, our philosophy is, when possible, to introduce answers to problematic cards rather than ban them. In the case of Fields of the Dead, we're introducing some new answers with Historic Anthology 2. Oh, okay. So on top of the fact that there are more cards in Historic, they're actually going to be adding some new cards specifically in the upcoming second Historic Anthology that will deal with them, including Ghost Quarter. Oh, okay, right on. And Goblin Ruin Blaster. With these new options and other decks picking up powerful additions, we're optimistic we can reintroduce Fields of the Dead without decks that use it becoming dominant. I think that's reasonable, in all honesty. Fields of the Dead just felt really powerful because of the current setup of Standard, and Historic does range further in the basically back catalog of Magic. We've got Amonkhet coming up later this year as well, which should be pretty sweet. Oko, Thief of Crowns, Veil of Summer, and Once Upon a Time are powerful cards that are difficult to interact with in an advantageous way. Can we just take a moment to pause and appreciate the fact that for those of us who have been playing Magic for a very long time and have seen green be like the Garbo color that most people would splash for at best, just a kind of meh, are you playing mono green? There's no chance you'll win at all because green is the weakest color in Magic. Like, green was the weakest color in Magic for so long that it's actually amazing enough to me to see this much green stuff getting banned, even if some of it is like, okay, Once Upon a Time, Veil of Summer, both just mono green. Oko is green and blue, right? So, I mean, I'm not surprised with blue and blue stuff gets banned like this, or blue's too powerful. But to have green standing there all dominant, as a big fan of mono green, I mean, I don't like super unbalanced environments, but I do like to see green get all big and beefy and be like, what's up? I'm a contender to be a problem too. I enjoy that. So, after observing the health of the format with and without these cards, we've decided to upgrade the suspensions to bans. For more information on why these cards were originally suspended, please see the December 2019 announcement. I did a video on that one too, if you want to hear more about the cards. Honestly, it's really, really simple with the cards. Oko, it was just so overpowered, he dominated 75% of the field. Like, Oko put crazy numbers up on the board. Absolutely insane. Veil of Summer is just way too good of an answer. It's just 1 green mana and ends up shutting your opponent down hardcore and netting you card draw usually. It's really, really strong. And Once Upon a Time is just too cheap and effective for what it does when combined with the new mulligan style that we do. The older mulligans wouldn't have had as big a problem with it, but the way that you can mulligan now, it really just almost extends your hand by a number of cards. It's a huge advantage. Once Upon a Time is a very, very strong card to have in your opening hand. Afterwards, it moves, like, if it's not the beginning of the game, it's not your first spell, then it's not nearly as powerful. But at the beginning of the game, it's incredibly, incredibly potent. So this says, overall, we're pleased with the current state of Historic and the variety of archetypes that have been performing well. We'll continue to keep watching how the format develops with the addition of Historic Anthology 2 and the unsuspension of Field of the Dead. If issues arrive, we're likely to suspend problematic cards temporarily to see how the metagame responds. I think that this is a reasonable way of doing things. I actually really like the suspension concept, where you can take a card basically out earlier than you would, where you don't have to wait for them to become ban-worthy. You can wait until they're enough trouble to go, okay, put them in the holding cell, let's see what happens, and will free them or permanently imprison them based on how things turn out. So in terms of these historic choices, I give them the thumbs up. They seem reasonable to me. Moving on to modern, we're going to talk once again about surprise, surprise, Once Upon a Time. Over the past months, Once Upon a Time has become one of the most played cards in Modern, contributing to several of the most popular and highest winning decks. The consistency provided by Once Upon a Time allows these decks to much more reliably enact their early game plan compared to other archetypes in the metagame, leading to less divergent gameplay paths. Going forwards, Once Upon a Time poses a design constraint in making it too easy to assemble creature and land-based combinations. In order to facilitate more varied gameplay, more varied gameplay, and mitigate future risk, Once Upon a Time is banned in Modern. Who would have thought something that lets you dig for free for two very relevant permanent types, lands and creatures, it's rarely ever going to fail to hit. The Once Upon a Time is one of the strongest early game cards I've ever seen. I can kind of understand them thinking, well, you know what, it's only strong at the beginning, and maybe it's, you know, over the long course of the game, it's not that big a deal when it came to design. But we could see with things like Oko as well, that design wasn't really on top of what was going to be a problem when it came to Throne of Eldraine. Throne of Eldraine was a very pushed set. It came with a lot of cool stuff, but as you can see, it also requires banning action. Moving on to Legacy. Since the release of Theros Beyond Death, we've watched the evolution of combination decks that revolve around the interaction between Underworld Breach, Lion's Eye Diamond, and Brain Freeze. In many cases, we'd allow a new breakout combo deck some time to see if the metagame can adapt. But as these decks were refined, it became clear from the rising win rates that Underworld Breach's interaction with Lion's Eye Diamond would remain problematic in Legacy going forward. Rather than allowing these decks to become a large part of the competitive metagame before likely still needing to make a change in the near future, we're choosing to ban Underworld Breach now. So basically they're just saying, like, look, with what's going on, there's no way we're going to be able to avoid banning Underworld Breach. It's just too powerful of an enabler. And honestly, when it comes down to choosing between banning Underworld Breach and Lion's Eye Diamond, you're going to upset a lot more of the Legacy crew, the people who play it, by banning Lion's Eye Diamond, because that is a massively expensive old school card. They're hard to come by. Underworld Breach hasn't been on the scene for that long. People haven't been able to get as attached to it. There's a number of reasons where it's better for them to just go ahead and ban Underworld Breach. Mostly you'll see when they do bans, they tend to try and ban cards other than the cards that are in sets that are like currently in print. But it seems like in this case, they realize because it's Legacy, just going with this cheaper whatever and nipping it in the bud now before it grows into a tree of despair is the way to go. And it's interesting to see, guys, this is actually part of what they're trying to do with their new way of designing cards. They have their new fire approach. It's like, I don't know, like fun, innovative, entertaining. I'm not sure. I don't remember exactly what it stands for. But I do know that what they're trying to do with this new philosophy is they're trying to push the power level of designing their cards in a way that it appeals to formats outside of standard. So they don't want the cards that they create in their standard sets to just be limited to the standard formats. They are specifically looking to reach outside and in some ways disrupt other formats, but disrupt them in a way where they're trying to help like birth new decks that are on an even competition level. They're not looking to create something that's so broken that it dominates the field and warps the meta completely like to one angle or something like that. They're just looking to go, okay, here we go. Some of these cards can fall into older strategies. They can help maybe birth new decks or give a deck that wasn't quite good enough that little bit of oomph that it needs to get there. But what they're not looking for is to create something that's so powerful that it just completely warps a meta. Now, in this scenario, the only thing you can really do with Legacy is just go ahead and issue bans, right? Because it's not like you can't design a standard set based on what's going to work in Legacy and all that kind of stuff. Those formats are way too strong. So occasionally you're going to find a card that is a decent combo enabler, but the further back you go, it becomes stronger because it has more different combos that it can activate with and it's easier to go off. And Legacy will always, those old school Legacy vintage formats will always be where the most insanity is, because that's the Wild West where you have everything, right? You have like really, really old school crazy power cards and everything that's existed for the last 26 years of Magic. That's a lot of power to draw on. Now, there are no Pioneer bans going on, but there is a section about Pioneer discussed here in this announcement, so we will go through that as well. It says, generally we're happy with how the Pioneer metagame has been playing out over the past several weeks. We saw tremendous diversity across the top decks of the 3 Players Tour tournaments in early February. Magic Online data indicates that the matchups between the most popular decks are in a healthy place, with each having both won and lost matchups against the others. However, we are aware of community concern about some of the new combos that broke out around the time of the Players Tours, including the Dimir Inverter deck, the Lotus Breach deck, and Heliod Suncrowned plus Walking Ballista. I actually, like, speaking of the Breach, I expected it to get hit in more formats, and it probably will, I'm guessing, over time. So, in general, we're okay with combos having a presence in the Pioneer metagame, but it's certainly possible to have combos that are too strong or too prevalent. Combo decks can be unhealthy in large doses, especially when they're difficult to interact with, win quickly, or win too often. Across the last 2 weeks of MTGO leagues, Dimir Inverter has had a 49% non-mirror match win rate. It's pretty solid. And has unfavorable matchups against 5 of the other 10 most played decks. That win rate has been drifting down over time since the Players Tours. Lotus Breach decks have been an even lower win rate, with unfavorable matchups against most of the other top decks. This is especially true post-sideboard, where many decks have access to Damping Sphere and other answers. Decks using the Heliod Ballista combo have yet to prove themselves consistently in competitive tournaments and aren't showing up at play rates we consider problematic. In addition, many decks that include the combo do so alongside other primary game plans, which means more diversity of gameplay and fewer games ending with the combo finish. With all this in mind, we're choosing not to make a change to Pioneer at this time. We'll continue to monitor the popularity and win rate of combo decks in Pioneer, and are willing to make changes in the future if necessary. The criteria we'll be looking at include overall and match-up by matchup win rates, success in tournaments, population in the metagame, and community sentiment playing with and against these decks. Our hope is to not make any changes until after the Player Tour Finals Houston in late April. So they're trying to maintain some sort of sense of stability for the Players Tour. Well, fair enough. When it comes to Pioneer, this is still a new format, so they're trying to play it safe on the side of letting things develop. If you're too heavy-handed, you can snuff out the format. If you're not heavy-handed enough, you can snuff out the format. So they have to walk a fine balance with this one, because Pioneer is still in its infancy and has yet to be like fully adopted by the player base. And we've seen formats like this kind of wither before. So it's understandable why they're trying to keep a somewhat light touch with this. Now, that covers all the banning news, my friends. Thanks for coming by and hearing what I have to say. I do have a second channel with a lot of fun videos over there. That one's all about just trying to make you laugh. So I invite you to come on over, trying to grow that channel. I'll leave a link in the description there. And if I remember, I'll even put it up here at the end of the video. Big shout out to all my patrons and channel members. Thanks for coming by. I'm heading out, and that means for now, I'm history, baby.